We have a lot of different versions of this logo, and let's say we have final approval. The client loves the simple flat version, and you have this polished version that they can use for other kind of areas. We have a lot of versions here we need to export. This can get very tedious, so be prepared. You're going to be creating a lot of different files. So we have a horizontal version, a flat version, a icon, square version. We have black and white versions that we need to be able to supply as well. We also want to present single color ones for embroidery on hats and polo shirts. There's a lot of reasons to have so many different options to give to the client when exporting your files. Not only that, we have to think about supplying them with vector files, so original vector files like this file you're in right now in Adobe Illustrator. There's also a .eps, which is another more universal vector file, and also a press-ready PDF, which can also be technically a vector file. You also need to think about web or digital files like JPEGs and PNGs with transparent backgrounds so they can start to put this on web assets like a website. You also need to supply files that work on dark backgrounds and lighter backgrounds. We have our different variations, which I just went over. We need a black and white version, a flat version with no effects or drop shadows, a detailed version if they decide to add 3D or do some extra effects to it. You also need a horizontal, a square, and a vertical version of every logo you do. And yes, that is a lot of different files, and they're going to be over 50 plus files by the end of the process. I like to keep my final logo files in folders to export to the client and zip it up. So I'll have a vector folder, and then I'll have a digital folder. And then it's further broken down by subcategories by variation or type, so black and white, flat, detailed, etc. This will make it easier for you to maintain and find a specific file if you decide to go further with this client. And it's also going to help the client know, okay, so this folder is digital, this is for print, and it'll be a lot easier for them. Remember to use artboards as a time saver. If your version of Illustrator supports artboards, this is a great time to use them. Create several artboards and put one logo version in each artboard so you can export a lot of different variations at one time instead of having to do one per file, which is what I had to do before they came out with artboards. So make a checklist of the different files you need for your logo package, and this will vary for each client. And make sure you get client approval of the logo before you start to export. Can you imagine exporting over 50 different file types and they decide to make a change? It's happened to me before, and it took me hours to go back and re-export all the different files for them because they wanted to do a simple change. So exporting should be the very last thing, an interaction you should have with your client for this particular logo design project. I made a little sample checklist for what I would probably need for this project, so please feel free to look at this phase number 9 in the guide to kind of get a little bit more detail about how this process works. And it's very tedious and there's a lot there to do. And you may not need every one of these for your particular logo for your client. So you could have half the amount that I have here, or you can have twice the amount depending on all the different versions they may request or need. So how big do I make these file sizes? So for vector files, there's not really a specific size because they're all scalable in their vector formats. So I like to keep them in a standard page size. So if I put a logo on an 8.5 by 11 inch, I like to do a half a page. So if I can create an artboard that's a bunch of half page sizes and export that way. This is more of a standard size, but it's not a required size because it's scalable, it's vector, it could be scaled up and down. So the file size is not quite as important with vector files. With web and digital files, these do need to be a specific size. And I don't want to make them too large because if you make them really large for digital or web, the file sizes will be too big to use. So with PNGs, I do at least 1200 by 1200 pixels for a large size, but I also export a smaller size, maybe 300 by 300. But remember, these dimensions can change if it's a horizontal or a vertical logo. It's just a general size I shoot for. And JPEGs can be smaller than 500 by 500 pixels. It can even go lower than that if the client needs or requests a very tiny digital pixel-based logo. So we're pretty much done with the entire logo design process, and if the client wants to continue to go further with branding, this is when we can take our logo and do some different things with it to continue that branding. I took this arrow, did some things with it, and this is where we continue to get some really good ideas here. I have this last one as an example. You could put, this is also good if the client doesn't want to go with the branding process. Then you can even create these on your own for portfolio purposes. This could be a made-up company you're working with, and you could put it on t-shirt mock-ups. I did an Instagram post. You could even do a login screen for the app and have everything there as well to kind of show the application of the logo in a real-world situations. So there's lots of amazing mock-ups you can find on graphicburger.com. There's so many resources of places to find these mock-ups. I like using Photoshop mock-ups because I can customize them quite a bit. I can change the backgrounds out. In this example, I changed it to our little orange custom-made background image, but you can even change the color of the phone if you wanted to do that. And so I just feel like Photoshop mock-ups are the most flexible one to use for presentation. So if I wanted to present this on an online website of mine for a portfolio, I can. If I want to put it on Behance, something that's helpful along with all these wonderful real application images is you can create a presentation video, and that's exactly what I did for this, and you're going to be able to watch that in full here in a minute. But I just used a very simple video editing software. It's called ScreenFlow, and this is how I kind of created it and kind of just brought in certain things. I wanted to have a little animated logo. So I used something simple called ScreenFlow, and it's just a very, very simple video editor for Macs. Of course, there's Camtasia, which is for Windows. There's After Effects if you really want to go to the next level in animating your logo and doing something really neat like that. After Effects is amazing, although it's quite a learning curve to learn. But it's a great program to learn because it's a part of the Adobe suite. So yeah, creating a presentation video for your Behance, just kind of kick off your whole presentation really helps. Video's amazing. And it's not something I'm going to teach in this class per se. I'm going to teach in other classes. Our future classes, it's just kind of nice to have a little video editing skills to really, really present your logo and your brand in the best way possible. So we went a little further than just the logo design process. We kind of added a little bit of branding elements, but I'm really happy with kind of how things turned out. We have all of our files exported, ready to package it up in a zip file, ready to send it off to the client. We have a happy client who is involved a few times in the process. We're able to sketch out all of our ideas, so we feel like we've explored the ideas that are worth exploring, and I feel like this process is complete as a designer. And I can feel confident moving on to the next logo design process, and eventually you won't even need this guide. You'll just know it, and you'll just be able to do it intuitively, and you'll be able to cut your time in half, how much you spend doing a logo design like this, and then you'll be able to cut it in half. But yet you could still charge the same amount, and even increase your rates as well. So it's all about just getting used to this process and practicing.